Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. In this one, we're going to go over the recently released Spotlight of Scorpion. Of the two champions, I'm a little bit more excited about him, but I think it's also bias. I grew up collecting the Spider-Man comics. I have some really cool ones with the Scorpion on the cover, and just in general, Spider-Man villains are some of my favorite characters in the entire Marvel universe, as well as I just like a good street level hero. Like, don't get me wrong, there's some really good cosmic and mystic type champions in this game that are some of my favorite champions, but at the end of the day, this is a brawling game, it's a fighting game, and when you get a good street level hero with good animations, it kind of fits the bill for me, and I think Scorpion is going to fit that quite well. So we're going to get into everything today. Quickly his bio. Of course, he is science. He's sort of one of those typical Spider-Man villains who, science experiment went wrong, got enhanced strength, and goes insane. So not much to say about that. Here's the prestige. I looked this one up. I believe it's top 30, which isn't too bad. He's sort of right around Nova, so he's not going to be targeted for prestige, but like any new champion, it's serviceable if you want to rank him up, and his sig ability looks pretty interesting. Now the mechanics, they're really emphasizing here this idea of building up to close to 2 bars of power, charging the heavy, throwing the special 1, and then building back up to a special 2. So that's going to be his core loop. And a couple things to note here, I do like that you don't have to use a special 3 even though you can. Additionally, anyone that sort of has the damage on the special 2, that's usually accessible unless if there's something like power struggle, it could be a little bit difficult for him. But I do like in general, there is a new mechanic that they are emphasizing with him, which we'll get into. It's essentially baiting their special, charging your heavy, and then canceling the heavy into a special intercept to get the most damage. There are other champions that have that playstyle, like Hela comes to mind, but I'm really hoping that the way his animations work, there's a very clear window of how to do that, and it's not too difficult. But overall, I'm very kind of excited that he's not just like a parry heavy or like, 5-hit combo type champion. Looks like there's some really, really interesting stuff going on there. Now, we need to talk about this screen because I think one of the coolest things about his kit is all right here. You essentially have these pre-fights. You can choose which debuff you want to apply. So it's either poison or rupture or shock. And we'll get into that in a second, but basically you become immune to the ones that you do not choose. So that means natively when you fight him, he's going to be shock and rupture immune, and he's going to be inflicting poisons, but you can do any combination of those things. You can become poison immune as well. You just need to decide your 2. I really like that option because it's a flexible immunity. In a lot of cases, if it's hazard shift, you can become half immune depending on which node it is. Rupture, of course, is going to be a little bit annoying if you're trying to counter him with Tigra or Spider-Man 2099. He's going to be the first rupture immune champion. And of course, being shock immune, like Nebula can't nuke him, things like that. Energy adoption lanes, shock tether, things like the poison inflicting nodes. Like, there's a lot of ways that you can mess with his immunity so you can get the perfect thing that you want. But to me, even cooler than being able to choose your immunities is what I call pick your poison. It's basically you can choose the way that you deal damage. Now, the way that he deals damage, first of all, this last line here on special attacks, if they're suffering from these sting debuffs, it's going to inflict a burst of sting debuff damage per stack of sting debuff. So this means he has a power sting, but the red damage off of the power sting is going to match the debuff. Additionally, off of his special 2, you get a big burst of red damage, and that is going to match the style of damage that is the debuff. So if you want to do energy damage, you pick shock, and then you can do both the power stings, the burst damage, and just the little ticking of the debuffs as energy damage. When you pick rupture mode, it's the exact same thing, only it's as physical damage. And then when you pick poison mode, it's the exact same thing, only it's direct damage, which means it's not susceptible to energy or physical resistance. As long as they're not poison resistant or poison immune, it's going to be doing direct damage to them. And to me, I think that is so cool because you can look at an entire lane and then, you know, realize, oh no, there's a Guardian that was Sig 200, so he's got that massive energy resistance. So you could choose to do poison or physical, or maybe it's like a 90% physical resistance node, or you're going up against a Rhino, and you can decide, hey, I am going to be throwing on the energy damage instead. Or, you know, mystics tend to have energy resistance, things like that. You can choose the way that your red damage does its damage, and I don't think there's going to be a situation where there's a champ that is immune to all three, you know, like shock, rupture, and poison immunity, or like resistance to physical or energy damage. So to me, I really like that there's going to be ways for him to do damage to champions like Dr. Doom, who are crit resistant. You know, even if it's a poison immune champ, you can choose a different debuff. I really, really like this. It means he's basically, there's going to be very, very few situations where he is stopped by some kind of resistance or immunity. So in addition to having his own immunities, the fact that his damage is that versatile is probably my favorite thing about him. And we haven't even gotten into the interesting stuff yet. So these debuffs are going to have a certain duration to them, but by using the special attacks, you can increase them. But before we get into that, just very quickly, the Scorpion Sense, it's going to be an annoying ability on defense because he has a chance to evade. But additionally, it is just kind of a safety net. So after an opponent evades or completes a special attack, Scorpion gains a non-stacking Scorpion Sense passive, granting 20% to evade for 15 seconds. Then it goes on to cooldown, and then when it would trigger, he does like a tail sting, and it puts on basically one of the sting debuffs. And I believe the way the developer's note reads is it kind of works like Elsa Bloodstone, where if this evade happens, you can also get right in. It creates an opening for you. So this is not something that you can rely on. But certainly a 1 in 5 chance to get an evade counterattack is not bad. It's a little bit like Medusa's auto block or something. You just get like a free mulligan every once in a while. And of course it doesn't trigger on block, which is, you know, that annoying passive evade ability that some of the old Spider-Man type characters had. He does not have that. So yeah, before we move on to the special attacks, I just wanted to mention that it's a little bit of a safety net. It's probably going to be a little bit annoying on defense because he's always going to have that chance to evade after you throw a special attack. So you may want to bring an evade counter, a poison immune counter when you fight him, but we'll see once he gets released in the event quest. All right, next up, Torment Debuff. So when we charge heavies, he gets these like passive gray stacks of torments. This is worded a little strangely. It says charging a heavy attack grants 1 charge. However, holding it will give you 1 every 0.4 seconds. So essentially what that means is you charge the heavy, they're going to stack up. What I saw in the deep dive is it's pretty easy to get to like 5, and then they basically will double up if you cancel into a special, so you can get like 10 torments on them. Landing a heavy attack converts them into torment debuffs. Landing a special attack while charging gets 1 extra debuff per charge. So again, like if you get 5 of the passive charges and you release into a special attack, that's that new skill that I was talking about, then you can double them up and go from 5 to 10. And the torment debuffs last 10 seconds, but pause during specials, so that's always nice. They won't fall off during his animations, and they cause all damaging debuffs to last 1 second longer. So you basically get a longer version of these, you know, sting debuffs on them, which is going to be important for them to keep up. So again, developers note, inflicting torment debuffs is essential in order for the sting debuffs to last longer for Scorpion to perform his full loop. And they bring this up again. One of the best uses of this ability is to inflict torment debuffs using the special 1 while almost at 2 bars of power, so that then you get the longer versions of the debuffs. You can build back up to a special 2 for the burst. All right, so now we're going to get into the special attacks. So here we go. Special hit 1. Each hit, I believe there are 6 hits to it, inflict a sting debuff. The effect has a 50% chance to go through block. It looks like you will be too close to them if you intentionally throw it into block, so that's more of a defensive ability. The final hit also does a taunt debuff, so that's always nice. It's going to reduce their attack. It's going to encourage them to throw a special attack. If for some reason this taunt does not proc a special attack, then it will turn into a suppression. So again, you're giving them less power. You can be more aggressive, which is pretty nice. And then the developer's note, inflicting torment debuffs by throwing a special one from heavy charging is the quickest way to capitalize on the torment debuffs, since special one inflicts tons of sting debuffs. And by tons, it means 6. And then, if you hold the torments further, they're going to be the longer versions of them. And then the special 2, this is your big damage dealer. All sting debuffs are paused for the duration of the special and refreshed by the end of it. So first of all, that is huge, because as you are performing your loop, if you can get all the way up to the special 2, that refreshing of them is going to be important so that you can sustain your damage. But the big one is right here. The final hit inflicts 2 bursts of sting debuff damage per sting debuff on the opponent. These bursts that we were seeing in the deep dive were like as much as 60k damage on a rank 3. So again, we don't really know how big these numbers are going to be, but the fact that you can use the torment, you can build up more of these, it's going to be a big burst of the red damage. And as I mentioned before, it's going to match whatever kind of damage your sting debuffs are doing. So it's going to be a very versatile kind of damage. And additionally, a petrify, a 40% petrify. That's pretty cool to me. The fact that you can put poisons and petrify, you can technically reverse healing, and we're going to get into the sig ability because there is another use for going to the special 2 for these petrifies. And then finally, the potency of the sting debuff burst is increased by 10% for each stack of torment. So basically, you're going to see like a little passive icon that looks like a crit damage, I think. And when that happens, it basically is going to be augmenting the amount of burst damage based on the torments. So again, you're going to have to get used to baiting their special, charging your heavy. It kind of reminds me of Tigra a little bit, where you bait the special and then you just crouch. But the cool thing is, unlike Tigra, who has to connect her heavy attack or a special based on spacing, if you have power, you can hold your heavy, let them charge at you, and then release into a special attack. It's a lot safer than Tigra, in my opinion, because you don't have to, time it perfectly and get the spacing just right, but you do need to keep track of their power and such. So I think it is going to still be a pretty skill-based type rotation. And then finally, the special 3, it's nice that this doesn't seem to be needed, but it kind of reminds me of like Mysterio or Red Goblin, where like if you really want to do a long fight damage loop, you want to get to the special 3 first. What it will do is get a long stun debuff, and it will also turn your heavy charge into a fury stacking charge, which is quite nice. These are fury buffs. And because you get a stun of 3 seconds off of it, you can actually charge your heavy right out of the special 3, build some furies, and at least in the deep dive, it looked like the damage was pretty darn good. And then you can continue with your normal loop of doing the special 1 into the special 2 while having these furies on you potentially. I really think that there's a lot going on here, and that in a longer fight, you can really do a ton of damage. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of Red Goblin after his special 3. It also reminds me a little bit of Mysterio, like I said. But yeah, I think that there's a lot going on here. I think there's a lot of damage, and the utility, it's mostly just about not being immune to any resistances or anything like that. That basically you can do your red damage no matter what. So going on, let's see here. We've got the signature ability. So this is while the opponent is inflicted with taunt, which is off of the special 1, Scorpion can block unblockable special attacks. The Scorpion's sense is consumed when the special attack is finished. This ability does not trigger against skill champions, which makes sense. So unblockable specials, you can block them as long as you trigger the special ones. So this, the special ones are part of the core loop, but I guess if you really wanted to have this as utility, you could just spam special ones. And there's, certainly a lot of unblockable specials like Dr. Doom, like Tigra, certain mystics that are pretty annoying. So I do like this ability. And then additionally, I think this is the part that scales, but I'm not 100% sure. If the opponent is inflicted with Petrify, which is off of the special 2, and they attempt to heal, then Scorpion gains 100% of the health denied from them. Each tick of this healing cannot exceed 53 health. The value scales with base health. So this is a little bit like Dr. Octopus, where the Petrify is going to be blocking and reversing some of their healing, as well as the poisons that you put on them. And it seems like it's kind of like a life steal. So I'm not sure how reliable that's going to be. Certainly against like a massive healing opponent like Realm of Legends Wolverine, I'm sure we're going to be able to see him like really cheese it with the healing, kind of like Dr. Octopus. But in general, you know, I'm not sure how useful that's going to be. I do like that it seems like if you get him at Sig 1, you get this ability to block the unblockable specials. Makes me think he doesn't need a lot of signature ability, unless if you really want to rely on the healing. And then the last thing it says, this ability allows Scorpion to avoid unblockable attacks as long as his opponent is taunted. Now I believe that should say special attacks. I don't think this counts for all types of unblockable, so just a little note there, which is relatively easy since it's off of the special one. So yeah, we did kind of talk about that. And then it mentions, it means that once you mix the poisons with the Petrify, he can steal 100% of the healing the opponent would have gained, which is pretty nice. So a good signature ability. It seems like it's not tied to damage, but just some extra utility. I don't really need to read this. Like I mentioned before, I think if you can't get to the special 2 and throw it when they have no power, like on a power struggle node, you're going to be a little bit in trouble there. It says his weaknesses are, of course, Purify, so like debuff immunity, you're not going to be able to do anything. Critical hits when Scorpion has high armor and resistance, his health is lower. Critical hits can bypass his defensive. Sure, don't get hit by critical hits. High combo counts as a defender. Any champion that can ramp up its combo quickly can bypass some of his abilities. That's interesting for sure. So I think when you're fighting him, you're probably going to want poison immune because he can inflict them through the block. You're probably going to want an evade counter. That's sort of what I would say. Or, you know, obviously if you can punish by purifying or things like that, a good skill champion should be able to get him down. And then in terms of the synergies, I'm not going to go over all of these because I'm going to kind of leave this screen up so that you can read them. But the two that really caught my eye were the one with Spider-Man 2099, which for Scorpion, it's fine if Scorpion sense is active and he is stunned. Scorpion's evade ability accuracy is increased to 100%. So, you know, if you get stunned, that's nice. But, you know, that doesn't work on defense, so it's not really something that you're going to hope to trigger because you don't want to get stunned. But the Spider-Man 2099 one seems pretty cool. When striking the opponent's block with a wither, for each wither, the opponent has a 50% chance to inflict an additional rupture. So as you probably know, hitting into the block to get the rupture damage is pretty important for Spider-Man 2099. And now you can essentially double, triple, quadruple them up depending on how many withers you have on them. You can get to that max stack of 20 even faster. More damage for Spider-Man, I'm into that, so that's pretty cool. And then there was one with Venom that I really want to show here. Let's see, where's that one? Dressed for a Funeral. So Scorpion, again, this one is pretty big to me. You gain a Fury passive for each Sting debuff on the opponent, increasing attack by 10%. As we saw in the deep dive, it didn't seem that difficult to get like 10 Sting debuffs on them before you launch your big special 2, so that's 100% additional attack. And then if you throw the special 3 before that and get the active Furies as well, man, I want to test that out for sure. I definitely want to test that out. And then for Venom, it says gain 25 power. I don't know if that means, I'm assuming that means 25% power per unique buff over, unless if 25 is like a unit of power that I'm not quite understanding. Either way, it's a power flood over 5 seconds whenever Venom gains a genetic memory buff. So this seems like you're going to be able to just get a ton of power with him. The thing with Venom is like he doesn't necessarily need power gain, because as soon as you throw a special 2, it's going to consume everything and turn it into Fury. So often you want to be spamming special 1s anyway. But I guess having infinite special 1s, because you keep getting these power floods, could be cool. I'm not really seeing a huge value to that, but I mean, more power gain is always nice, right? And then I'm keeping my eye on Agent Venom here, because when inflicting the opponent with bleed, also inflict an Incinerate debuff, and it does 220% of attack and energy damage. That's a big Incinerate off of the bleeds. And if you run Agent Venom with Kraven as well, he can get bleeds off of basic attacks. So I am picturing Agent Venom with the bleeds and the Incinerates doing an insane amount of damage, which to me is music to my ears, because Agent Venom is definitely one of my favorite characters in the comics. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff here. Of the 2 characters, I'm more excited for Scorpion. I am biased because I like the character in the comics. I like his design and his animations so far. I will definitely be testing him as soon as the CCP gives me one. And as soon as that embargo's up, you're definitely going to see a Scorpion video, because I am pretty intrigued by this guy and just sort of the utility and damage that he brings. So what are your thoughts? Do you think I missed anything? When I do get him, is there anything you want me to test for a little bit later in the month? Just let me know. Hope you enjoyed this video and you have a great day. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.